Maybe you noticed that I'm kind of swagged out like a Russian doll. And I guess there's a couple of things to that. Like, first thing is that as Hugging Face, we're proud proud partner of AWS, not just because we use all their stuff, but also because we work hand in hand with their engineering teams from the hardware layer all the way to the machine learning platform layer. If you remember the diagram from Hershey. To make it super easy for all of you guys to use this stuff and build a great application. So super excited to be here. And then the other reason why it's significant is kind of a metaphor for the talk. What I want you to be able to do or feel confident about doing at the end of the talk is to take the Hugging Face model and tools and then wrap it up on AWS Compute and build great apps and maybe save a lot of money doing it. There was like a lot of stuff that I wanted to cover, like generative AI is like a huge theme. There's like so much going on around it. There's so much going on around AI in general and at Hugging Face. So it's kind of a new talk I did to be able to fit what I wanted to say in 20 minutes. It's the first time I do it, so it's probably going to be a disaster. But thankfully, Ino from our success team is going to take over to walk you through a hands-on example. We just watched how to generate images with stable diffusion. So we're going to do an example around generating text. Super excited about that. So what I want to do is to tell you 15 things about Hugging Face that you probably didn't know. Raise your hands if you know about Hugging Face and have some sense about what we do. Okay, cool, awesome. So that's kind of why I wanted to do something about things that you may not know to hopefully keep it short and interesting. And then I want to tell you 10 things that you should know about using Hugging Face on AWS to build great apps and to save money doing it. And then we'll go through the hands-on example. Cool? Number one. So number one thing you probably didn't know about Hugging Face, maybe you did, it's our mission, right? Our mission is to democratize good machine learning, and the way that we go about it is through open source. So open source, that means open source model code, that means open source libraries, that means openly available model weights, openly available data sets, so you can access and build your own stuff on top. We go about it through community, so everything that we do is community driven. The globs of models are available, contributed to by the scientific community. By the community are open source, over 1,000 contributors. Everything we do is driven by community. And then everything that we do is ethics first, and that's the good in good machine learning. Since everything's ethics first, I want to start with that. So the second thing you probably didn't know about Hugging Face. So ethics is super important. For generative AI, it's particularly important. The work that we do is super impactful. So we're super proud of our ethics and society team to put up some ethical guidelines for the Diffusions library. As the library is young and evolving, we want to set this stuff up. For us, ethics is about like how we operationalize it, right? It's not so much about what we talk about or stand for. It's about like what are the tools that we put out, that we make available, so that users can make ethical driven decisions. And so on this, like the screenshot on the right is a space you can find within the Society and Ethics organization on Hugging Face, and it's a great resource to see all of the tools that our team has put together, so you can measure bias in your data sets, so you can do a whole different things to make sure that you're following ethical guidelines. Cool. Number three. So number three, Hugging Face happens to be like one of the top 50 open source contributors as measured by the number of GitHub stars. We're in good company with AWS over there, and maybe you know and you've used transformers, and probably if you're here about generative AI, you know about our diffusers library. But there's a whole ecosystem within Hugging Face to do everything machine learning, from the Accelerators library to distribute your trainings, the Optimum library to accelerate your models, Evaluate to evaluate your models, TIM, also known as PyTorch image models, etc. So all the tools you need to do machine learning. Number 4, diffusers, the library, is actually growing faster than transformers. If you look at the first few months of the library, so congrats Will. Will is in the house, core contributor to the diffusers library. So yeah, this, if you know transformers, like one of the magical things about it is that whichever framework you're going to be using, whichever task you're going to be using, whichever model architecture you're going to be using, it's the same code. And so it's very easy to switch from one model to another model, from one framework to another framework, etc. With diffusers, you have the most comprehensive collection of generative diffusion models to generate images, to generate video, to generate audio, to diffuse all the things. And it works out of the box with super abstracted APIs, but if you want to dive in, then you can really customize everything. Number 5, there are over 150,000 free and publicly available models on Hugging Face. Wow. When we talk about the model provider, usually you have a choice between like the large version, the medium version, the small version. Like here, like whatever sort of machine learning problem you're trying to solve, like there's a model for that. There's a model for any language, there's a model for any task, there's a model for actually 25 different libraries. That covers natural language processing, if you want to summarize text, if you want to translate text, if you want to classify text, if you want to generate text. That covers computer vision, if you want to classify images, detect objects, and all that cool stuff. That includes audio, if you want to transcribe text, text to speech, and a few other things, including reinforcement learning. Yeah, 150,000. But number 6, little known fact, actually over 50%, most of the models that we host on the Hugging Face Hub are private models. Because when you go on Hugging Face and you create a model, you can create a public repository or you can create a private repository. Typically, if you want to work within your team, within an organization, you use a private repository. We actually host over 300,000 models on Hugging Face. Number 7. There are actually over 1 million model downloads happening every day on Hugging Face. So it's humbling to see the adoption by the community and the wide variety of use cases that are being used. Like this chart is actually part of a space, so all that data is publicly available. You can find it at the little URI here. Number 8, how we make money. That one's funny to me because like when I talk to people, like often I get that question, so how do you guys make money? Like I imagine that like everybody here, we're just like printing money out of machine learning models. No, not really, and that's a funny one to me because that's also my job, so like maybe not doing a great job. But how do you make money? So through compute, right? So you get a model, you want to do something with it. On the Hugging Face Hub, you can deploy it on inference endpoint, pay for the compute that you use. You want to fine-tune with auto-train, no-code, that's going to use compute. You want to upgrade your space, your machine learning application with like a hardware accelerator, that's going to be compute. So we sell compute. And then the other thing is we sell support. So it's quite difficult for most companies to really find a way to take all this stuff and build a great use case, and so we'll help them through service expert consulting. Number 9, and that's for the how do you say the model consumer category. So okay, there's 150,000 models available. Like, how do you go about that? Like, I don't have 2 days to find the right model. Well, for you, developer, we have these tasks pages. So if you go to huggingface.co/tasks, you can have a top-level view of, okay, I want to do object detection. So click the object detection task, and here you're going to have an example. You're going to have recommended models, so you can do API calls, pick the model, do your own endpoint, make it super easy for people to get started. Number 10. All right. So one thing that's very important to us, I said it at the beginning, is open source. Provide open source solutions, open source alternatives for people to build solutions that are their own solutions, using their own data for their own customers, that are secure, that are working within their own environment, they don't need to send data out to APIs, etc. So what we do and what our science team does is we are reproducing open source versions, alternatives of state-of-the-art models. So a couple of examples here. On the left is the Big Code project, which is a collaboration with ServiceNow, where we're building a code generation model. So if you want like an alternative to Codex, there's already some great checkpoints available and some more cool stuff coming on. On the right, this is Victor and our science team talking about our efforts to reproduce Flamingo, so a multimodal model, Flamingo developed by DeepMind. So expect a lot there. What's important for us is that everybody in the community has open source solutions to do state-of-the-art stuff. And we talked about Bloom earlier, and we showed, like, write me a story about Pokemon with Bloom. So Bloom is large language models, 176 billion parameter large language model that came out of the Big Science collaboration that was led by Hugging Face last year. And you know, Bloom is a large language model, so it's really about predicting the next token, etc. It doesn't really understand when you tell him an instruction. What you want to do with some of those large language models is really give them like instructions, like write a story about Pokemon. And so to do that, there's a new kind of models, a new kind of large language model that's like the instruction fine-tuned language model, and that's what Instruct GPT is. That was like the basis for ChatGPT, and BloomZ is to Bloom the instruction fine-tuned version of Bloom. It's also 176 billion parameters, and it's able to understand instructions, and that's a very little known fact. So you guys should know about that. And if you want to build on top of instruction fine-tuned large language models, you should definitely check out Bloom's. Number 12, so we're talking about generative AI, and we talked about stable diffusion. Recently added to the Diffusions library is ControlNet, and ControlNet is really, really cool. It's the ability to tell the model what they should do, and you can do that by using the edges of an existing image to tell it to fill around the edges. You can doodle something and tell the model that should be a car, and it's going to draw a car where you're going to doodle the outline of a car. It's really, really, really amazing, so you should try it out on the space. I have the space there. It's a space from the community. You can try all these different modes easily, and the cool thing is that with diffusers, ControlNet is super, super fast, so it's got a fast implementation. Number 13. So now, okay, it sounds really cool, like I love the stable diffusion stuff, but like I don't want to like open a notebook and do all this stuff. Well, we made a Mac application, a Mac client. So if you go on the Mac App Store today and you have a decently recent MacBook, not mine, you can download the Diffusers app from Hugging Face, and it's going to use your computer to make the predictions if you get an M1, M2 chip on there. So check that out. Number 14. Okay, so everybody here wants to know about generative AI, so you want to learn about how to do this stuff. We have a free online course about diffusion where you can study all that stuff, learn how to build applications that generate images, that generate audio, etc. It came out like when? Like a couple months ago? Something like that. Anyways, it's super current, it's super awesome, it's super free. Check it out. 15, and that's so that's the last of the 15 little things that you probably didn't know about Hugging Face. It's Hugging Face.js. So if you're in the camp of like, yeah, I'm not a data scientist, like Python, school's not really my jam, like I build web applications, etc. Well, Hugging Face.js, right? You can do all the great stuff that you want to do with Hugging Face, interacting with repositories, serving inferences from models, etc. You can do that right from the browser, right from your web app. So a really, really cool way to democratize machine learning and enable like the broader range of developers to do all this cool stuff in applications. All right. So that was 15 things about Hugging Face that you probably didn't know. Okay, I'm on time, not bad. Now I want to tell you about 10 things about Hugging Face on AWS that you should definitely know. All right. So the first thing is that you can start your workflow right from the hub. So I told you about the Hugging Face hub. There's 150,000 models out there. You can pick any of them to do any kind of task for any kind of modality. And when you're looking at a model, there's a little button there that says train, and there's a little button there that says deploy. If you click that, you're gonna find an Amazon SageMaker option. And that's gonna tell you what you need to plug into SageMaker to get started with that specific model. So you can start from the Hugging Face hub and then go right into Amazon SageMaker. The second thing is that working from Hugging Face models and building new models, new applications using Amazon SageMaker, like everything is detailed with lots of examples, notebooks within the Hugging Face documentation. So huggingface.co/docs, you can find Amazon SageMaker. That's the best way to get started to do great stuff there. Number 3, deep learning containers. So if you remember when we were going through the stable diffusion example, like there was a bunch of like stuff that you needed to do in order to get started, right? Like pip install that transformers version, that datasets version. So the point about deep learning containers is that all of your environment is already fully set up for you, so you can download it. It's open source, you can see what's on there. We maintain it to make sure that all the latest stuff that we put out in the libraries is available to you. So pull the deep learning container. There are some for PyTorch, there are some for TensorFlow, there are some for training, there are some for inference. You pull it and you got all your environment ready to start doing work. And it's compatible with the SageMaker Python SDK. All right. So you can start from the hub, you have the whole documentation, you pick a deep learning container and go. Number 4, SageMaker parallelism. So that's when you want to go faster with your training, okay? So we're looking about how to enable that in the notebook. Well, with the Hugging Face deep learning container, the training deep learning container, it's really just a parameter. So here with this parameter, SM distributed data parallel enabled true, well, you get data parallelism working out of the box for your training. Congratulations. So super easy to take advantage of these great features and make your training go fast. Same with model parallelism. There's a bunch of additional parameters you can add in there to customize things. Number 5, the SageMaker Inference Toolkit. So I talked about like the deep learning containers that sets your environment, but when you want to run inference, you want to do this in a way that's easy. You want to do it in a way where your input is going to be pre-processed in a way so your text makes sense in tokens, your image makes sense in pixels, etc. And post-processing so the output is a text or an image as opposed to whatever comes out of the model. And so the SageMaker Inference Toolkit makes that super easy and makes that compatible with all of the APIs, the abstraction that we built into the Hugging Face libraries that we built into the Inference API on Hugging Face, so you can reuse the same parameters to get the same results on SageMaker using the SageMaker Inference Toolkit, the Hugging Face Inference Toolkit in SageMaker. And see how easy it is, right? So you want to deploy a model? Cool, 2 lines. Create a model, .deploy. Number 6, okay, cool. So you train your model, you use the data parallelism, went super fast, now you got a model, now you deploy it, you did .deploy. But what if you get like requests between this hour of the day and that hour of the day, or you don't get a lot of requests all of the time? Like, do you want to keep all those instances running? Well, no. You want to use SageMaker serverless inference. So you don't let your instances sit idle and save gobs of money. And you can do that because SageMaker serverless inference is compatible with the Hugging Face Inference Toolkit. So really cool. That's the architecture. We got a blog post about it. You can check that out. Number 7. Let's save even more money. Let's save up to 90% of your costs using spot instances. And that works also for training. And so it's integrated within the deep learning container so that if your spot instance gets kicked out, everything, all the checkpoints have been saved automatically within the S3 bucket over there on the right. So that when a new instance comes on and up, you can resume the work and you can save tons of money. Again, there's a cool blog post about it. Okay, now let's save even more money. Let's start working with those hardware accelerators that have been designed from the ground up to do machine learning. So we talked about Inferentia, we talked about Trainia, we talked about Inferentia 2 that is in preview right now. So what does that mean for you? So we ran the test. We ran the test with BERT large. We did like your quintessential little fine-tuning job, right? So you picked the BERT large model and you're going to use your, is it the Yelp reviews? Yep. And you're going to fine-tune that on the Yelp reviews data set. And we did that on Trainium 1, TRN1 instance, and we did that on an A10G instance, was like comparable in terms of price point. And we get our job done 5 times faster on Trainium than on the GPU. So for you guys, that's a lot of money saved. Okay, so now you trained your model and you want to deploy it, and that's probably where you're going to spend the most of your money. And the good news is that with Inferentia, so it's a hardware accelerator that's been built from the ground up to do machine learning, we get like 70% cost savings on our inference. Depending, like we've done the same job on Inferentia, we've done the same job on GPU, and so that's where we get. The cool thing is that, so we talked about the Neuron SDK. So the Neuron SDK is your interface in order to be able to leverage Trainium, in order to be able to leverage Inferentia. Again, like our job is to make all this stuff super easy for you guys. So we built an AMI, like an image that you can get for free on the AWS marketplace that has everything set up and ready for you to do work. So yeah, use it and save money. But there's more. And that's number 10. So number 10, the thing that you should know. So I mentioned that Inferentia 2 is in preview. Today we got our hands on it, we played around with it, and it's wicked fast. So we, again, did a very typical job doing batch inference on BERT base and measure the results like in a very out-of-the-box sort of experience. And we got like up to 8 times lower latency. Latency is the time it takes to get your prediction out of the model using Inferentia 2. So I think that's going to become the default for a lot of production applications. And you're going to be able to use our Neuron AMI on the AWS Marketplace to do that. Cool. So I told you 15 things that probably you didn't know about Hugging Face. I told you 10 things that you should definitely know about using Hugging Face on AWS. Hopefully now you have a better idea on how you can use our models, how you can use our tools to build great applications and save lots of money doing it on AWS. So now I'd love to welcome to the stage Ino Reyes to do a walkthrough, an example using a large language model. Thank you.
Just setting up this desktop. Let's get these.
By the way, I didn't introduce myself. I'm Jeff Boudier. I'm on the product team at Hugging Face based in San Francisco. Super excited to meet all you guys.
Cool. Let's get one more round of applause for Jeff. That's awesome. My name's Eno. I'm an ML engineer on the success team at Hugging Face. I work with our enterprise customers to help, as Jeff mentioned, help them leverage open source deep learning techniques. I kind of focus on large language models, generative models, and the like. And today we're going to be talking about open source LLMs in production. In particular, we're going to be deploying one of the instruction-tuned models that Jeff also mentioned, Flan T5 XXL, into Amazon SageMaker. So, is it a clicker? Oh, there we go. So, Flan T5 XXL is a better version of T5. And so T5 is kind of like Bloom that we talked about before, or like the original GPT-2, for example, and Flan T5 is more like is an instruction-tuned version. So basically the way this works is you have a data set of prompts and the response that those prompts should generate. And these are typically created by humans. There's some pretty interesting experimentation of generating this with language models themselves. But the idea is when you fine-tune a large language model that's pre-trained on a huge data set of internet text, when you fine-tune it to take instructions, it turns out that this increases the perceived reasoning ability and general performance of the language models on prompts. And so the goal of this slideshow is by the end, we're not going to do it live in SageMaker just because I think it's pretty much the exact same thing and it takes a couple of minutes to actually get everything and we only have 5 or 10 minutes. But the idea is we're going to just quickly walk through what it's like to take one of these models from the hub, pull it down, deploy it for inference on SageMaker, and then we can kind of see the results of what something like that might look like. The idea is basically you can host an internal model, which should be equivalent to any of the other instruction-tuned models. And actually, Flan T5 XXL is 11 billion parameters, but in the last week or two, a new model from Google, these models are all Google, came out, Flan T5U2, I believe it's called, which is 20 billion parameters and has extremely competitive performance with the GPT-3 series. So not the ChatGPT series, but just the original GPT-3 models. Before we get started, I'd also like to mention all of the code here is available at the end with resources. It was created by one of my colleagues, Phil Schmidt. He's an awesome engineer, works on a lot of the stuff with AWS, and I highly recommend checking out his blog because if you're developing with transformers or generative models in production, he's probably got some of the best resources on the internet to do that. So with that being said, it's pretty easy to get started with SageMaker. You'd open up a notebook in SageMaker Studio, and to start, you'd install some dependencies. Our favorite Python dependency manager pip, which never breaks, can be used to install SageMaker and the Hugging Face Hub, which are the only two prerequisites for this. And then what you want to do is just instantiate a SageMaker session. And so this is pretty boilerplate. I don't think we have to go into too much detail here, but once you have that, you can actually get started with the Inference Script. So you make a code directory, simple one-liner in a shell, and you have a couple of requirements. One I want to highlight here. So Accelerate is Hugging Face's library designed for accelerating inference and training of transformer models. There are a lot of really cool optimizations in there, and we recently added something, PEFT, parameter efficient fine-tuning, which allows for training and fine-tuning of very large language models. It makes it a lot simpler, a lot easier, and within the grasp of like startups. And so the other one, Bits and Bytes, really cool library, not all Hugging Face, but Bits and Bytes allows for quantization. Basically, it allows your models to be even faster. So with those installed, basically all you're creating here is an inference script. And so what the inference script is it defines a model function, which is run when the endpoint is instantiated, and a prediction function, which is run when inference is called. So it's pretty straightforward, and I want to point out the auto model for seek-to-seek LM. What that is it's the auto model is basically a simple one-liner to pull down a pre-trained model from the hub and bring it in and use that in your environment. So it's like turns the whole process of downloading and bringing everything into your code into a single line. And the same thing with a tokenizer, which is an important part of the input process for these language models, a single one-liner from the auto tokenizer. So it's really simple to get the actual model instantiated. And then with prediction, again, you have some input parameters, their IDs, and really you're just calling a decode on the tokenizer and a generate function on the model, and you get a prediction. So, as you can see here, 50 lines, and you've got a endpoint pretty much ready. There is a little bit of overhead of downloading the actual model file into SageMaker. So right here, you're just pulling it from the model directory. To get that model directory, we have a Hugging Face model ID. In this case, the HF model ID there is Phil Schmidt's. He has the repo on the Hugging Face hub. It's Flan T5XXL. He's got a special version, which I'd recommend using, which is sharded and an FP16, which is all to say it's basically more efficient and makes it a lot easier to run. And then you take that model ID, you do some fun little adjusting of the strings, and then you make a directory and just copy that for the inference script to pull. Once that has been created, there is a little bit of compression that needs to be done on the model file itself, which is like, this is boilerplate code. I don't think we need to go too deep into it. Just take for granted the definition of the compress function, that it works, and it basically puts this into a directory for you. And S3, awesome place to store these model files. You upload with the S3 uploader, which is a one-liner from the SageMaker library, and the whole thing is ready to go. You're ready to deploy. And so you just create the Hugging Face model class, which is a part of the SageMaker library, define the URI from your S3 model, some versioning for transformers, PyTorch, and then you can deploy. And we're deploying right here on an M1 G5X large. You can really choose a couple of different options for the instance type. This is going to be cheap. This whole thing running 24/7 is going to amount to around $500 a month, roughly, with all the optimizations we ran. And this is an instruction tuned model. If you deploy the 20 billion parameter one, it will be state of the art in your own environment for less than $1,000. And so running inference of this deployed model is really simple. You have a payload, which is just the text string. which, as you can see, there is an instruction. Let's summarize the following text. Then you have some parameters, which are typically specific to the model. I think in general, a lot of these models have standardized the parameter inputs. Temperature and these other variables are pretty similar to GPT-3, so if you're used to working with those models, parameters are very similar there. And then you just run the predict. And so here you can see, this is from one of the data sets in Glue, and basically it's just a summarize. It's from the evaluation set also, so it's not in the training data. It's basically just a summarize instruction. You can see here this long story. Let's summarize it, and the output right there, Peter stayed with Elizabeth at the hospital for 3 days. More inference, you can see an example of step-by-step instructions. So here, answer the following questions step by step. Roger's 5 tennis balls, he buys 2 more cans of tennis balls. Each can has 3, how many tennis balls does he have? This one probably would take me a little longer than it would take the model, but he buys all that, he's got 11 tennis balls at the end. And so this is really cool because a lot of the time you've got tasks which are not necessarily right for something like GPT-3. They are simpler tasks. They don't require like long form generation. You've got tasks which have private data which can't utilize an external endpoint or can't leave your service. And so the ability to deploy a state-of-the-art instruction-tuned model into your own environment is really powerful, especially if you're in healthcare, finance, and related industries. A lot of the time when we're working with customers, one of their questions is, we can't use GPT-3, we can't use Cohere, what else can we do? And this is a really simple way to get started. There's a lot of optimizations, especially some of the stuff that Jeff talked about, that are coming out, which is gonna just drive the cost down here. And it really wouldn't surprise me if in the next 2 to 4 years, open models like this are just the go-to move for startups to be able to get specialized inference in their domain in an effective way. So I think that in terms of the direction of these language models, I do think a lot of the time fine-tuning a model like this will outperform even models like GPT-3, the 3.5, like the most recent Da Vinci model. And it wouldn't surprise me if that holds, because ultimately if you have a lot of domain data, bringing that domain data into the model is something that will allow you to leverage the power of these smaller, more specialized models. Make sure you delete it if you're not going to keep the model, because that will rack up a little bit of a bill, but I guess AWS might like that. That's pretty much it from us. Yeah, that's deploying your own model. I'm sure there's a way for us to distribute the PowerPoint at the end, but it's got a lot of resources if you just want to follow along the code. Don't use the slides because those are screenshots of text, not actual text.
Cool. Thanks everyone for attending. It was a really exciting presentation from both Rushi and the Hugging Face team. Right around the corner here, there's some food, and a bunch of the team members will be here to answer specific questions about your account or dive into any of the things we saw today. So again, thank you all for coming. I'm super excited to be here in person and meet you all. So thank you.